Hello, everyone, and welcome to Club Deck Corner here on Club at 22, the Rangers podcast. I am Scott Carney, and this week I've been joined by none other than Four Lads Had a Dream CEO, Stevie Clifford. Stevie, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks very much for having me on. Listen, that's an impressive intro there. I really like that. Do you know, I'm jealous straight away. I would love like Manscaped to sponsor me, honestly. So there is room, guys. See if you're watching, I'll take some free gear for come and sponsor me over at Four Lads. That would be amazing. As you say, I don't need it for my head, obviously.
No,
So
no. I didn't even ask Stevie to do that. That's fantastic. No, Manscaped, mate, that's a bit of a weird one. They just kind of reached out to us, and ever since then, they've just been happy to keep going with it. They're class with us, honestly, they are. And generally, I'm not even doing a plug here. This isn't even the time I do a plug. I do a plug on a Friday. Their stuff is great. Like, it's really, really good stuff that you get.
uh,
So, but
instantly impressed.
I'll,
So
I'll
yeah.
drop I'll drop the guy an email, mate. I'll see what I can do. Since you've done me a favour coming on, mate, I'll see what I can do. No, are you missing Rangers yet?
Yeah, listen, I kind of like I enjoy the break because I think after the season we've all needed a break. I think there was points in that season where we really wanted it to end very quickly, and there was others where it was really difficult at times as well, and others were a bit better and stuff. Under Beale it was a bit better, but I'm sure as we kind of go through it, we'll discuss it. But do I miss them? Yeah, absolutely miss them. You see, when if you're really honest, when it's excuse me, sorry. I had a wee strawberry milk before I came on there, mate, and it's come back on me a wee bit. So, when do you know when there's cup finals and that? Every single one of us looks and watches and wants us to be in them. So, I think there's a determination, certainly from me, and I hope that everybody, in the playing staff and at the club really wants next season to be a big one and a good one for us all. And I think that it's heading on the right direction. I'm really pleased with all that. But yeah, I mean, I miss them. It's part of your routine, isn't it? But do you know what I did enjoy, mate? And this will sound really random. That Partick Thistle Ross County playoff was unbelievable. What a game that was on Sunday. So I sat and watched that and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thought that Thistle were really decent, and I was looking forward actually to them coming up just for a bit of a change for us and a different team again and stuff like that. And then Ross County out of nowhere storm
Yeah.
back, and I suppose that's the kind of romantic side of it. You still get the Champions League final on Saturday and things to come as well. So before you know it, it won't be too long before we're back. I think by the time the Champions League comes on Saturday, it'll only be 3 weeks before we're back in training. So it won't be long at all.
Won't be long at all, mate. I'll not tell you what I did on Sunday night. I watched Britain's Got Talent, mate. But the people that watch this podcast will know I'm a very arrogant football fan, mate. I tend to just watch Rangers and then big games really after that. So people won't be surprised to hear that. But no, I followed it on Twitter and I could see, I was like, what a game of football that was. But
It
it's
was
typical.
unbelievable.
If I sit down to watch a game like that, mate, it would have been the worst game in the world. Like, do you know what I mean? It's usually my luck. I'll sit down going, "I should be a cracker." I'll sit down and watch this, and then it's like the worst game ever. So I tend to pick and choose my games. But I'm looking forward to the Champions League final. Quickly, Jink, Man City are going to do it, aren't they?
Do you know what? It's really difficult to see past Man City. See the way they
Mm-hmm.
dismantled Real Madrid. That was a real eye opener. Especially not only away from home, I thought they controlled it really well, but the home game was incredible.
Yeah,
That was them just flexing their muscles. Inter Milan will be a good side. They'll defend well, but I think it's difficult to see past City. We sat down to watch the FA Cup final on Saturday, and what was it, 12, 13 seconds, 1-0, and it's
yeah.
just like ridiculous. So they are some team. And as we talk about this season, the Liverpool game, I'm mightily glad that we never got City or one of the really, really elite teams. Now, I think Liverpool are an elite team, but I'm talking about top tier level eliteness. Man City are scary at the moment. So, yeah, I mean, Pep Guardiola is a bit of a genius, you know what I mean? So, you can only watch them in awe, and I don't see past them on Saturday, absolutely.
There's no way I do either. They are an incredible football team to watch. But like a perfect example of me saying that I sit down and watch a game and nothing much happens. I watched the Europa League final, and it was awful between Roma and Sevilla. I was just like, it was just one of those games that I think nothing happened for a large period of that game. But no, for Man City, they're honestly one of the most impressive football teams I can remember watching. They are just incredible. I mean, it took Pep a while to get this formula, if you like, and it's exactly what I think that he wants. And then obviously you add to that Haaland, who's going to take football by storm. The boy's, what, 23? He's got like 10, 12 years left, probably. He's not even hit his peak. I mean, it's incredible. It really is incredible. Anyway, mate, I'll leave that there. I don't want to talk about. We'll talk about Rangers stuff. People are wondering what I'm doing. So quickly, mate, what's kind of close season like for you? What do you do in terms of the blog? Is it just business as usual? You just carry on?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I tend not to try and speculate. I tend not to do that because I think that this is going to sound bad, but as a kind of media and club partner, commercial and stuff, that people think that when I post, everything's taken as kind of
Gospel,
gospel
yeah.
and everything comes from the club, and it's really not like that. So I try not to do anything. People ask me, who do you like to come in? And I used to answer stuff like that because I would say, oh, do you know, it would be great if Jermaine Defoe comes in, right? And then all of a sudden, people are saying, Stevie says Jermaine Defoe's coming. And it's really difficult, So obviously that was an example that did happen and it never quite, I'm just plucking a name out of the air. But so I try not to kind of get involved in those conversations. But the likes of, Dowell and Sterling, which were already widely known, Jack Butland will be the same. When it comes to the time of being able to say, right, this is done, club is going to announce it soon. That's the kind of stuff I do. Just keeps it the kind of site ticking over and stuff like that. As in blogs, I think blogs kind of slow down a wee bit during the month of June. We have a bit of a break, while we just kind of refresh and then I aim to write one a week, which is my aim throughout the season, as well as match reports and stuff like that. We changed match reports a wee bit. I decided just to do player ratings and man of the matches and stuff because everybody does a match report, and a lot of people, then if you're not getting that kind of feedback, I like to try and be interactive. So come and tell me who you thought was man of the match and stuff. And next season when we start it, we'll tally them up and tally all the scores up and see who gets player of the year and stuff. So it falls a wee bit down when you have a season that's disappointing, you don't win anything because nobody cares about player of the year and stuff. So hopefully next season we can have a lot more. But the next few weeks will be quieter blog wise until it all starts up again. So the site will just keep kind of ticking over. It normally does, but there's no. I don't think it. When I write, I like to write, and it's impactful and it's meaningful. If you can shove out a blog that maybe has speculation and stuff on it, and I just don't think there's any merit to it, really.
Yeah, we tend to be the same. I think a lot of the time people believe that we have some contact with the club and all that. I'm like, it couldn't be further from the truth. So when I pass opinion on stuff, sometimes I'll get like DMs of people saying, "Oh, is this definitely happening?" And I'm like, I've got no idea. It might. I was like, but I couldn't possibly tell you for like if it is or not. It's just all about opinions for us. In terms of us, we're pretty much the same. Summer we tend to slow down a bit. I think this is going to be the most active summer we'll have as a podcast since we started, just due to the way that we've kind of grown over the time. And obviously we're thinking about different ideas and all that, but it's finding the time. I mean, I'm on dad duties Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, mate, when the missus is late at work. It's hard to find the time, do you know what I mean? It really is difficult. But it's still a real joy for me to be able to do it, and I never take it for granted what we're doing. And again, I'm getting to sit and talk to a guy that I used to sit and read his blogs and things like that happen, mate, and I'm like, that's just bonkers that it's happened. See, I went a wee bit fanboy, mate, there, mate, and I'll try my hardest not to. Right, we'll get into the season just past, Stevie. All the way back to the start of this season, but we're going into the season probably rightfully full of optimism, considering we were coming off a Europa League final, and it was a decent enough pre-season. And I'll hand on my heart now, I wasn't too displeased with the recruitment that we had done in the summer. I still think we were maybe heavy in terms of players that should have been moved on. I think we didn't do enough to get recoup money as well as bringing players in, if you like. But I don't think many would have seen this season panning out the way that it did, mate. Did your crystal ball see anything different than that?
It's a different one. It's a difficult one because I remember thinking that we would nail the league. I remember thinking we've maybe got a cup, and I don't mind saying that I was really, really wrong. When I look back on it, there were several warning signs in pre-season. The noises coming out of the club, weren't good
Mm-hmm.
in terms of this has become a little bit of a grey area or something you can't really mention because when you mention it on Twitter, people go, "You're very anti Van Bronckhorst" or "You're very this." But the noises that were coming out last summer were that this preseason wasn't great. There wasn't a lot of running. The players weren't doing a lot of fitness. Then I watched them against Sunderland in that game where it was 1-0 and it was called off at half time, and we were
Mm-hmm.
absolutely dreadful. And I thought to myself, this is concerning to me about where we are in our kind of thought process. But at the time, you put it down to being, well, it'll be fine. And you move on quite quickly. And you're trying to focus on the positives, which is what I try and do. And sometimes you don't allow yourself to go, hold on, there's warning signals here everywhere. I'm not really enjoying it. So then they got beat by, St. Gilloise, the Belgian side, who incidentally have went on to do very well in the Conference League and narrowly missed out in their league there just at weekend. So maybe they weren't as big as a Diddy's as we thought at the time, or I certainly did, but I didn't rate them. I thought they were extremely poor. I thought that we didn't do well, especially. And there was wee signs there, but you gloss over it, right? So I'm still in full Van Bronckhorst mode. Thought we started well. We were extremely unlucky at Easter Road and down to 9 men through one really poor decision from Lundstrom and a wee bit
Mm-hmm.
of stupidity from Alfredo, unfortunately, took us down to 9 men. And then they equalised in like 93 minutes or something
Yeah.
through a wonder shot, which went through Goldson and over somebody else and blah, blah, blah. So we were unlucky. And then we started all right in the league. We were actually doing all right. A couple of 4-0s at home. It was fine. And then qualifying for the Champions League, the squad began to diminish through injuries. And if you look at it now, maybe didn't give that as much as we kind of as I certainly should have given it credence to it because Suter, Roof, Lawrence, look at the difference they would have made to that side. Hollander, these guys like incredibly unlucky. Van Bronckhorst, and then we get to the Champions League, and it's just too much. There's just too much of a gap, and I think we all expected. I certainly did. I can hold my hands up and say that I've been naive at times this season and thinking in that Champions League that we could have went not far. I don't mean that, but maybe we could have got third. I thought that instantly. Maybe we could get something here. We'll do all right at Ibrox. These teams were miles ahead of us, frighteningly ahead of us. And I think that once that started happening, the form in the league started to go a wee bit to the wayside. Heavy defeat at Parkhead. The issue with Parkhead thing was it wasn't isolated. Parkhead was basically February 3-0 repeated like
Yeah.
7 months later. And then they go Ajax and get beat 4-0 all within the same week. And there was players, it looked to me at times where I highlighted this on social media and it didn't go well because people were kind of really grumping. But Ryan Kent in those games, particularly the Parkhead one, I think it was the third goal where he stopped and Jota ended up, there was a free kick and he ended up playing. Jota then chips it in. And I highlighted that. And there was a couple of incidents during that Kent was way off it. Now, we know now in hindsight that Kent would never ever hit the heights in this season or go anywhere, but there was early signs even then that this season was beginning to go and peter away. So it was just, the start of the season, I never expected it to go how it went. I never did. I thought the Champions League qualification, Europa League final, Scottish Cup, I thought we were flying. I thought Giovanni had Postecoglou's number, not in terms of dominating them or that, but there was enough to be seen to give us enough hope. That Scottish Cup semi-final win, even the draw at Parkhead, it looked like we had it, but to go there and get hammered the way we did and turn in that level of performance where to me players just simply chucked it. Very early on, I began to realise that Van Bronckhorst wasn't the answer. Not only him, the players as well, but for me, Van Bronckhorst very quickly. I'm not saying I turned on him. I don't think that that's right. I just very quickly lost trust in anything that he was doing. And by the time that Liverpool game came at home, that was it for me. It was time for change. And unfortunately, we didn't do it. I think at that point, we were 2 points behind the league. And I posted on social media and said that if we don't get rid of him now, if we don't take him out now and sack him or whatever, or come to an agreement, then this would only get worse. they kept him on another couple of weeks and it went to 9 points, and by that point it was done. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying the board, hindsight's wonderful. At that point, he's 2 points behind. We can't do much in it. It's all right sitting here saying, but I just really felt it swung really early for me in terms of losing faith in Van Bronckhorst and where we were heading. Rightly or wrongly, I like Gio. I feel bad for him, genuinely. I think that hindsight, maybe too tough on him or whatever, and he's dealing with a squad that was injury ravaged and stuff. I get it. And perhaps, it was a wee bit too tough on him, but I instantly seen issues that I didn't like and problems to the point where I'm physically saying to him in press conferences, famously, do you still think the players believe in you? Because it doesn't look like they do, which is kind of unfair to pose that
Mm-hmm.
question to a Rangers manager and him. But the way that everything was going and how we felt at the time, it just didn't look like it. I thought that Gio lost the team very early last season, and when you look back on it, I know hindsight's wonderful. The signs were right there.
Yeah, I think the point that you made as well about the fitness levels, that was probably, again, without agreeing everything that you just said, that was probably the first thing that I realised, where I thought, we don't look like we've had a pre-season. Like, the players were looking leggy quite early on in matches, and I was going, something's not quite right. I was the same, mate. I tried my hardest not to. I've never really been a happy clapper, mate. I never will be, but I was like, you've got to try and remain as optimistic as you can about things. But for me, ultimately, after that Old Firm game at Parkhead, the one you mentioned, I was like, we're not going to go any further forward with this, because he hadn't learned anything. It was, as you say, it was a carbon copy of what we'd seen before. And at that point, we, as I say, as a podcast, we all pretty much called it. We all pretty much said, we're not going to go forward going forward. Gio, and even the last time you were on, mate, you did say that you were a fan of Gio. You said he was a lovely guy. He was good to speak to in the press conferences, etc. And you were happy enough with where he was at the time. And I wanted him to be a success. I'm not going to lie. I loved Gio. I wanted him to be a success. But ultimately, you could see that the players didn't really want to do it, and they'd lost the. I think he'd lost maybe not lost the dressing room, that's probably too harsh, but the players had lost interest in what his ideas of playing football was, and there was the reluctance to change as well. I suppose maybe the style of football that we were watching wasn't great. I mean, that horseshoe football was never going to win you a league, I don't think. Is that harsh, or would you agree with that?
I think you could see that they lost belief in certain games. I think that the other thing is, as well, is when you went behind at Parkhead the way that they did, there never looked like there was anything to come back.
Mm.
Whereas at least in the second half of the 3-0 game, there was right, okay, there's a wee bit there. There's, I remember Jack smacked the bar and they missed a couple of chances and stuff. And it's not rewriting history as such because the game was over. But at least you could say, right, well, there is something slightly there. But that 4-0 game was really horrible to watch. And it was just difficult because it was all self-inflicted. It was all really and that was the point where I think Gio, for me, kind of lost faith. I think a lot of us lost faith in what he was trying to do. Not a lot of us said at that point, right, I think it's done. I think a lot of us said he can't survive many more like this, not only in Old Firm, but just in general. And then when you think about the style of football, we go back to the Livingston 1-1 game at Ibrox, which was huge. I think Celtic that day had maybe playing Hearts, I think it was, or they were playing St Johnstone, one of the two. And that might have been the game where St Johnstone scored really late and then they still won it. We went out and drew one each with Livingston. And I think that was the day we recorded something like 40 crosses into the box and there was nobody in there. And at that point, you were just going, this team has no direction. It has no cohesiveness. There's just nothing there. Champions League unfolded. And I don't think anything that you're saying now is unfair. It's a difficult one because I can't rewrite history. I was really positive for Gio last summer, really positive. I thought he was going to do it, and I thought we were on the right track. Very quick, and even the summer signings, like Suter coming in from January, good signing. Tom Lawrence, excellent signing. I was excited about him.
Yep.
Cholak, thought this guy will score goals. Matondo, I wasn't sure about. Seen him against West Ham, thought he was going to be ridiculously good. So I was excited, and I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't. I don't think it does anyone any good. That you can go back and stuff, and you'll see me saying that same thing. So it just very quickly swung for me. And I think the week that ultimately killed it, when we went to St Johnstone, got beat 2-1, beat Hearts 1-0 at home, and then drew with St Mirren 1 each. I think everybody at that point was just like, we've given up under this guy. So, here's your decision you've got to make. But unfortunately, by that point, it was 9 points, and the whole thing was done. So, really difficult. And then I think when you see the uplift under Beale as well, and the consistency and stuff like that, not in everybody, which I'm sure we'll get to, but there's some players who undoubtedly should have went last summer, and there's some players that have come in that have just not been able to do it. Couple that with, I'm not saying they're down in tools, but they should have went. Player injuries, a manager you're maybe not sure about. When the players start to get that mindset and stuff as well, it was only ever going to end one way. I'm glad
Yeah.
we did make the decision when we did, because it only would have got worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only bit that surprised me was the fact that we had the Sky Sports interview came out with Gio just before he was sacked, and everybody was like, "Well, he must be staying," and it was that kind of. Then before you knew it, he was gone, and yeah, it was the search for the new manager was on, and that's kind of lead us nicely on to Michael Beale. So, oh,
I was going to say, interestingly enough, on that and in the run up, the word from the club, because we finished obviously on the Sunday night, and the word from the club during that week was there would be nothing. There would be nothing said. There were no rumours. There was a couple of people that had said he'd been sacked on the Sunday night. It was all denied. Agent denied it. Gio denied it. And then on the weekend, the following weekend, which was the second weekend after, a week after the St Mirren game, we got word late on the Saturday night saying he was getting binned. And I wasn't sure. And it wasn't until Chris Jack phoned me at like 7:30 on the Monday morning and said he's gone. He's 100% gone. Phoned down, phoned a couple of people, went back to Chris, and it was confirmed. Chris was the one that broke that story on the Monday morning. Chris was one of the first people to phone me with it, Chris Jack. And so I knew, and it was Chris's story, so Chris ran with it. And then I said that morning, I said he's been sacked, full story covered by Chris Jack. And then we went live on Rangers Review, and Rangers Review that morning was, I think, over 3,000 people watching it live, which is an incredible amount of people.
yeah,
Watching it live just to talk about it. And I was slightly stunned, mate, slightly stunned. Even though I'm not going to say I wanted it. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wants the Rangers manager to get sacked. But I think in my lifetime, it was one of the first sackings like that. Certainly, I know Walter was sacked the first time, but he was
yeah,
allowed to finish the season. Alex McLeish allowed to finish the season. Le Guin kind of went, wasn't sacked, kind of left. All that. This was the first proper time that somebody just like that out of the blue kind of thing had been sacked. So it was a major thing. I've watched back that podcast actually in the morning, and I am kind of stunned, and I was still stunned by it. So it's not like Rangers to sack somebody. So even though I think it was unanimous, we all agreed on it, there was still a degree of surprise behind that, and I think that's totally fair.
Again, without trying to pick at your contacts, I'm not willing to name any sort of names or nothing like that. But even when the decision was made by the club, did you have any sort of feedback to the club as what had happened? Had there been some form of review with Gio, and there had been a completely disagreement on where he was seeing the team going forward? Was there ever anything more than that, or was it just a case of that was the day that they decided that he was for the off?
No, I don't have. I don't have at that point. Um, I wasn't particularly close to Stuart Robertson. I'm not particularly close to the people that run the club. I've got a completely different relationship with James Bisgrove and things now, and John Bennett than I had with Douglas and with others. So um, David Graham also, I think, maybe was still there in charge of the media at that time. So I didn't have a close relationship with anybody at the club as such. It's a different one now. But at that point, I never really had the possibility or the capability to go to them and say, what's the ins and
What
outs of
happened?
this one? So, no, I didn't have any. I'm led to believe it was firmly Ross Wilson's decision. That's come out since then. He was in charge of the footballing department. But no, at that point, Ross and I didn't really have a great relationship either because I was obviously heavily critical rather, of the job that he was doing, to the point of kind of saying, if you're getting rid of Van Bronckhorst, you need to take this guy with you also,
Mm-hmm.
which then led to a bit of issue because you can't very well go and criticise a guy and then go, by the way, have you got comment on this? So, but I've got to be, four lads and myself, like, I've got to be honest. I've got to call it as I see it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And I'll always, like, at the end of the day, it's only my opinion, and my opinion will be wrong. But I think that if you start saying that, everything's wonderful and everything's great and, nothing needs changed, then very quickly people will begin to wonder, is your content any good because you're not being honest? So I think I always at least try and be honest. And it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't mean it's right, but I at that point I had no kind of mechanism to go to the club and say, even as like a kind of club partner, and that I had nothing there to go and say, what's the reasoning behind this? Has there been a decision in the last week? Has there been a fallout? Has there been this? So no, in answer to your question, there was nothing relayed back to us other than it was a Ross Wilson decision.
Ross Wilson, yeah. Ross Wilson's a whole podcast in himself, mate. To be completely honest, I was one of the ones that always try to see the positive in him. But the more you would have the discussions, even amongst the lads that do the podcast with, the argument against him was insurmountable. Really, I was like, I can't really disagree with any of that. It was one of those things. I was one as well for thinking, oh, he'll see the summer out in terms of Ross Wilson. I thought he would see the summer out, etc. And obviously that didn't come, but I think it's all happened at the right time. Just obviously, mate, you touched on it, so I'll just quickly mention that. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you're like the rest of us that you're pretty happy with the reshuffling of the board. I'll put it that way. You're happy with the changes that have been made.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anybody who's read or listened to anything I've had to say in the last 18 months would know that I've been highly critical of the board and all the kind of running of the club, Ross Wilson in particular. So I always felt that we weren't getting the right kind of work done. It wasn't, I always felt like we were in a bit of a malaise. It always seemed to me that it wasn't quite right. And as a club, we were just kind of floating along instead of pushing. And, you know, we'll live in, we're going to find out if James Bisgrove is the answer. But in dealing with James Bisgrove, in the times that I've met James and the times that we've had him on to the blog or done an interview, like everything James has said to me has come true. And that's really important to build a trust level. Now, it was easy for him to come in and say, commercial, we're going to raise to 10, commercial, we're going to raise to 20. Then he said, we're going to triple this, we're going to raise it to 30 odd million from a 10 million start. He says, we're going to get these partners, we're going to do this, we're going to build a museum, we're going to build a new restaurant, we're going to get Gordon Ramsay involved, we're going to build a pub, we're going to build, like the sports bar thing.
Yeah.
Pub type thing. Everything that James Bisgrove has said to me and the promises he's made to the support have come true. Now he's made mistakes, right? Australia was a massive mistake. But he comes out and immediately fronts up and says, look, this is my decision. I took it to the board. This is why I did it. I hold my hands up. I like that because we've had so many years where people have been in charge that haven't told you the truth and haven't been open and transparent with the fans. Now, I don't expect James Bisgrove to come out and say to us, you've got 15 million to spend in the summer. Let's hope the manager does well. I don't need that kind of transparency. But what I like off the club is to have a very forward-thinking club that will say to me, Stevie, do you want to come in and speak to a guy from customer services? Because you've made a lot of noise about customer service not being good enough. We've done this work on it. We've replaced a lot of things. We've changed it. Come and meet the new manager. Let him explain to you. Let us give you a kind of insight into the job that they do and tell the fans how that they can contact the club. That's what I like. Instead of there being like a wall of secrecy, it's little things like that that have changed. So then we spoke to him recently. Also, we spoke to Greg Marshall just on changes to do with MyJers. Now, MyJers has got 60 odd thousand people in it almost. So having somebody sit down and explain it to us properly is a good thing. It's that kind of transparency you need. Now, these changes have come in within kind of 2 months. In a couple of weeks, I think 21st possibly, we're having our first fans forum.
Yep.
That date might not be quite right, folks. You need to double check that one. But we're having our first fans forum, right? And that's a great insight into what's going to be happening, what's going to be doing. James Bisgrove turned up at a press conference, open, honest, transparency. I don't like to criticise others that have left, but that never happened before. So immediately I'm seeing things that I like. I'm seeing a transparency. I'm seeing a forward-facing club. There's changes already. We're looking into safe standing again. Brilliant. Let's get safe standing. Let's be forward thinking. Let's try and galvanise Ibrox, make it a more vibrant atmosphere. Let's do things that can help. All of that for me is brilliant news. They might not do it. Listen, they might decide that we can't do it, or we're going to do something else. But look at it. Trial things. Newcastle game. Let's get the standing section behind the goals. All that's forward thinking, and it's easy wins for this support. It's easy wins for the board. So, listen, the Park's legacy is 55 and returning this club to financial health, and I don't think that can be downplayed. A lot of time for Douglas and the money and the work that he's done, but he wasn't a John Bennett in terms of being more forward thinking, more engaging with the support. So I campaigned, I wouldn't say campaigned, I would say that I spoke a long time about the need for change. Now that it's here, I'm going to embrace it. I spoke a lot about Ross Wilson, about the job he'd done as a whole, as a collective, and where it was failing. That's only me. It's only my opinion. It's interesting that James Bisgrove has come in the time that he's come in. I think 6 heads of department have gone. Various other people at the club have gone, and we're now appointing guys that are young, fresh. Some of the guys I've met at James Bisgrove, David Mulburn in customer service, is unbelievable. The job he's done, the way he's changed things, the openness, the transparency. Really young, hungry Rangers fan, wants to do well, wants to fix your problems. Josh Hollywood in commercial, despite having a cool name,
fantastic name.
Is really young, forward thinking, wants to progress. Nick Thompson, now head of PR and media at the club, really young, really hungry to do well. As a supporter again, knows what you're kind of thinking, really receptive to ideas and can I get this, can I get that? He's no issues. Before it was completely different. So these young guys that have been appointed, and there'll be more to come, I think are going to bring a really enthusiastic and a really new kind of vibrancy to the club that we've needed. We were in a position last year where when people couldn't get stuff to work, there was no customer service to phone. There was nothing. There was nothing. People used to come to us and say, "How do you fix this problem?" And we didn't know. And I moaned and moaned and moaned and moaned at the club and didn't get anywhere. And then all of a sudden things have changed and it's looking a lot better. And these are the tiny wee things we need to continually push the club and make sure. But the thing is, when you speak to James Bisgrove about that and you say to him, James, I'm going to keep pushing for this. I'm going to keep on at you. I'm going to keep, he says, good. I appreciate that. We need to know what the support think. We need to know what they do. It's a different mindset now. There's a completely different attitude towards the supporters than there was before. So I'm all in favour of it. Time will tell whether or not they're the right appointments and they work. There's a lot more appointments to come. We're going to get a new head of youth development. There's going to be new commercial guys come in. You know, so there's a lot more to do. New women's coach, everything. Like there's a whole lot of change throughout the club. And I think that you'll see a kind of vibrancy that we've needed. So, yeah, I'm in favour of what they've done. A bit of a long-winded answer, but I like to give some context on how I've got there. But to give like listeners a view of what it's like now to what it's like before, I can now pick up the phone and speak to James Bisgrove, whereas before that was never ever an option. I'm not saying I do it because I don't. He's a very busy man, and unless I really need something, I'm not going to bother him. I haven't so far, but the option's there for me, and he'll drop you a text, Stevie, good to see you today, blah, blah, blah. So the difference between last year and this year, I think, is a massive change, and hopefully everyone throughout the club will see that. Or sorry, throughout the fan base will see that when they're dealing with the club and things.
I think it's massively important for James Bisgrove to have took the idea on that it's important that there is a communication between the fans and the board, because for too long, I can't remember, I mean, I'm going back years where people were saying there's no communication, you're shut off, you're not seen as really part of the club, you're kind of taken for granted, all them kind of accusations that would get flung at the board. Whereas with James Bisgrove, I'm the same, I like everything that he says, and you're right, the stuff that he's initially said has come to fruition, it's happened. The safe standing thing, I'm one for, I'm all for it. Again, it would never probably affect me. Where I sit, I'll probably sit there for the rest of my life, and that's what I hope anyway. And it's not, but I'm up for anything that would improve the atmosphere, improve the match day experience within the stadium. I always will be. And even things like the disabled facilities, now that they've done it, that what they're planning to do is incredible. It's going to give, I mean, the access to it's going to be fantastic, and it's long overdue, that. I mean, long overdue. So no, I'm the same. At least I know, Stevie, if I need to ask James Biscoe a question, I'll just be dropping you a message and saying, do me a favour, Stevie, eh? I'm only kidding. So we'll move away from the board, mate, and we'll move on to the appointment of Michael Beale as Rangers manager. When the names were starting to get flung about, mate, as they do, were you happy with the appointment of Beale initially when it happened, or would you rather the club have took a kind of different direction, if you like?
No, when it all started to happen, and even before, when there was speculation on the lead up, I said Michael Beale. Listen, to use a word that you used before, I'm a bit of a fanboy when it comes to Michael Beale. A lot of time for him when he was first here. He gave me a lot of his time. He's never once, you pick up the phone and speak to him, he's never once not answered or not replied to a message or whatever. And he was incredibly kind. And even when he left, he kept in contact with me. Would drop me a message. I remember after the Liverpool home game, he dropped me a message, and we kind of exchanged views and stuff. So Michael Beale to me wasn't a friend as such, but was somebody that was always really nice and really decent. So yeah, I mean, I think that had a bit of an influence when it came to who was going to get the job and who I wanted to get the job. I was always very, very pro Beale and pro the appointment. So I was delighted that he came in. I was really sure that he would change things. There was a lot of I don't know if you remember at the time, there was a few questions asked about, is he here just to kind of so that we can save money, and would he just keep people, and would he have that kind of mental attribute to be strong in the dressing room and stuff? I don't know if you remember that kind of stuff in
Yeah,
that narrative.
yeah.
And I said to people, I was like, you don't need to worry about that from Michael Beale. He's not like that. He's very strong willed. And, very much in that dressing room before with Gerrard and stuff, he was a man that kind of drove things, and he was the one that was pushing on and would bollock people and stuff like that. Stevie G was Stevie G, and he was an incredible, aura around the guy and everything else. But the brains behind it all and the mastermind behind it all, and that was very much Michael Beale. So my thinking at the time, I said that at the time as well, again, it will be on public record, that I was very much pro Beale, and nobody really came even close. I think that it was very clear early on, even as much as being Monday morning, Van Bronckhorst gone, by Monday night, Michael Beale was coming. And I think, by the lack of other names and things mentioned, I don't think there was ever another case. We knew at the time as well that Michael Beale had been offered a new deal by Palace, not by but Queen's Park. And if he'd signed that for Queen's Park Rangers at the time, then he would have been out of our touch. We could never have got him at that point because the money that they would have demanded and stuff. So we needed to move, and we needed to move then. And I think, in fairness to Ross Wilson, the criticism we're giving him, I still think it's the right decision he took, binning Van Bronckhorst when he did. A brave decision maybe at that point in the season or whatever, but to get Michael Beale in at that point, I think was a really smart move.
I was the same. I was all for Beale, mate. As soon as we were linked with him, I was like 100%. I think that's who we should go for. I remember people talking about Sean Dyche, and I was like, I just literally no interest in it at all for me. And I always knew he would probably hang about and get himself a job in England. But even like Ryan on the podcast as well, like Ryan will back Beale, of course he will, but he wasn't overjoyed with the appointment. Like as you said, people thought, oh, he's just coming here, he's going to play his pals. Everybody, it's all job for the boys kind of thing. Everything's going to be fine. He's not going to. It's the safe option for Rangers, etc. But I always thought there was more to him than that, and I believe from the time that he was here under Gerrard, he fell in love with the club, and he'd always said that the way he used to speak about Rangers, even after he'd left, he was like, "It's an incredible football club." It was always it would be one of his ambitions. It'd be a dream for him to come back and manage here. So all the things for me, I know it's all easy saying that on. Words, it's just words at the end of the day, but his actions so far have been pretty positive so far from what I'm seeing. It's safe to say, mate, he came in and he steadied the ship to a certain extent. Obviously, some of the times watching Rangers has been tough over this season, but since Beale's come in, it's not been particularly enjoyable. However, it's still very much a work in progress, and as I say, we're now into the summer, which we will come on to, where the real work actually starts. But since he has come in, what do you think the biggest improvement has been? Do you think there's a complete change in attitude? Obviously, you're in about the club a lot more than that I am per se. Is a kind of change of, does everything seem different with Beale coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Michael Beale very quickly done was kind of give them a belief again, which maybe they've
Yeah.
lacked. I think that was quite, he organised them. I think that was inevitably, immediately, they were the kind of changes that needed to be made. And we instantly kind of seen it. It's no coincidence that they went on such a good run, consistently, especially away from home. I think they maybe won 9 games on the run away from home.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen them held on at New Year. If we could have beat them 2-1, I would have liked to have seen the dynamic that might have swung or changed. I don't think it would have changed the overall outcome, but it certainly might have made it a bit closer. But I think that the immediate change in what I seen was just a kind of more organisation behind the scenes and more kind of. I don't want to go down the route where it's ultra critical, but he said it himself when he talked about small changes, even in training, when he introduced the kind of fun games at the end of the week and stuff like that. I think that those were massive differences. Um, you know, I don't want to get into players saying this, players saying that, but there was definitely a kind of improvement. And, Ryan Jack, I think, very kind of pointedly said in one of his press conferences a few weeks after Beale had been there that there was a huge change in even what they were doing in training and stuff like that. So I think that speaks more volumes in, I would say. But I think that, Beale Beale did go. I said it consistently on things like the review and stuff that I thought that Michael Beale was punching above with this squad. And if you think about it, when he came in to where he's kind of ended this season, Rangers have had no forward line at
Mm-hmm.
all. We've had players that have completely checked out the building, and this was interesting when it came to I think it was the semi final of the Scottish Cup, and they were having the Ryan Kent debate. I kind of said on Rangers Review as well that I thought that he checked out, and I didn't think it would be worth playing him. Actually, I think I tipped Sakala to play ahead of him, or it would be my choice. And as it turned out, Kent got whipped off at half time, and we would never see him again in the Rangers jersey. So I think that Beale's had a lot to contend with. I think he's had a lot to try and deal with and get through. But ultimately, we've not came close enough. We've been put out of 2 cups under him. The league was already gone, so any inroad to that wasn't merely impossible. I think, especially with them being so strong and consistent. So I think that Beale's done a relatively good job on what he's had. We would all like to have gone and beaten them once at Hampden out of the 2 games. I think that's quite clear. But if you look at what he had to contend with, the injury list, no forward line there at all. I think that what he's done is been enough that we've seen enough, from Raskin, Cantwell, the boys that have come in so far that we can sit and say, right, I think he's got a good eye for a player. I think that's fair. I think that you can look at it and see that guys like Todd Cantwell are hopefully going to thrive again next season. He finished incredibly strong at
Yeah.
one point, where if he had been here, even the time he was here, there was a strong case of him being player of the season, which is ridiculous for a guy that was here for 4 months or whatever. But he was that good, so we can look at it and say that there's a lot enough to be positive. We had a really kind of positive last Old Firm result. Regardless, they had checked out. I think that's absolutely fine to say that. I think they came and kind of wanted a wee stroll in the park, but they still did the job. I still think that guys like Suter and that have got a lot to prove. So I think that there's enough from what we've seen of the 6 month under Beale that you can sit and say, right, there's enough to be positive that when he gets a fit squad pre-season behind him, the faces that he wants in, more importantly, and again, I don't mean to be harsh, but I think it was important a few of those players left and moved on. I'm thinking Alfredo, Ryan Kent, even Al McGregor, guys that are, and nothing against these guys, but massive figures in the dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Beale said an interesting thing, which I kind of subscribe to, which is sometimes you have to let big presences go to let other presences in a dressing room come through and have room to grow and be able to express yourself. So um, I think that's where I am with it. I'm not glad that Alfredo and Ryan Kent are gone. That's maybe not the right way to put at it, because if we're leaving, we want them to get money. But I am pleased that there's a freshness around the squad which we've needed for a long time. I think we're sitting now. 6 have gone out. You'll see over the next couple of weeks, Glenn Kamara, and Scott Wright, John McLaughlin, and stuff like that. Ben Davis, maybe guys, Ravi Matondo, these guys will leave as well. So you'll be looking at somewhere, around about a dozen. There's already 10 went from the academy. So there's going to be that fresh turnover that we've needed. And I think there's enough under Beale to be positive and happy enough where we're going. He can certainly organise. He certainly plays a brand of football that we want to be watching. And I think that when we get the right players in there, this will kick on, certainly.
I agree. I think it was very important to make the decision of moving Alfredo and Kent on. I think throughout the season I chopped and changed between who I would rather keep and who I would rather go out the two of them. But ultimately, when you look at things in hindsight now, you can look back on the season. Neither of them contributed anywhere near what they should have been for a player of their standard at this football club and their stature within the club. So I think it was important for Beale to make that decision. I'm not shocked that Ryan Jack kept on. I think that one made sense to me. Plus, I am Ryan Jack's biggest fan, so I'm not shocked. People won't be shocked to hear that I was delighted he was staying. And I think Scott Arfield was the only one that was really up for question. Scott Arfield's a great guy. He's been a great servant for the club, but I'd still think it was important for him to move on for his sake as well, more than others probably. Were you shocked that Scott Arfield wasn't offered another? I think there was obviously discussions happening between them, but it didn't seem to fit both parties.
No, before we get to Scott Arfield, what I would say about Ryan Kent is, just to be completely open and transparent, if we were sitting in March, I would have said to you right here and now that I would throw absolutely everything at Ryan Kent to get him to stay.
Mm.
But maybe that was a romantic head over heart kind of, or heart over head thing, because I seen him. There was a Dundee United game at home where I think we won. I think it was a 2-0 or 2-1. One where Tillman, I think, scored a couple. And he got robbed of the ball within about 8 minutes by Pollitt. And Pollitt ended up going the length of the pitch. He went past Goldson, who went to ground, and then he cut it back, and Davis put it out. And at that point, when he got robbed of the ball, he just gave up and he started kind of looking. He didn't track back. And I don't know if that's fair, but at that point, I started to properly watch him in that game, and then the subsequent games after that. And he just looked like a guy that had chucked it, like a guy that had given up. Fair or not, I'm not sure that, I can only kind of say how I felt. And at that point, and then leading up, you had the games at hand in the semi-final and stuff. And it was clear by that point that, Michael Beale said almost pointedly in his press conference, I'm delighted with the majority of the team. Almost all of them gave me everything they had in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very clear who he was referring to that hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't be two-faced on that. I can't sit and say I'm delighted, at one point and not be truthful on the other. So, but at that point, I started to change. As for Ryan Jack started 40 games this season. He's been available for, I think, 85% of games under Michael Beale. There was never a question over me of whether or not we should keep Ryan Jack for an injury viewpoint or that. I think, we play 60 games a season. I don't think any of us are keeping Ryan Jack to start every single game, but Ryan Jack is a very important player for us. And Ryan Jack's a baller. Ryan Jack can play, and he's
Definitely.
a good player. So it's not I don't think it's a romantic thing to keep him just for the sake of keeping him. I think we're keeping him because he can play. I think John Lundstrom's better when Ryan Jack's there. I think that Nico Raskin's better in the central when Jack and Lundstrom can kind of parole and patrol the areas and kind of go back and cover fullbacks and stuff. So I think he makes players better by doing stuff that we maybe don't always recognise and is clear to the eye. So with regards to Ryan Jack, mate, I'm there as well. Jack's a player I like. He's a guy that I like very well. By the way, Ryan Jack is a very nice guy to deal with, not only to speak to around the training ground. He always comes and speaks to us. If he's going past, you'll get a kind of handshake or whatever off Ryan Jack, and he's a really, really nice guy. He wants to be here. Ryan Jack was on a contract that was quite valuable, quite high resources. He's on a third of that now. So Ryan Jack's not staying for money. He's not staying for, he could have went elsewhere. He could have went down south. He had offers from abroad that would have made him money. Ryan Jack's staying because he wants to be here, and I like that. I like that from a guy that's eager to try and kind of play his way and play for the club that he loves. So, no, I'm all on board with Jack. Well, as for Scotty Arfield, no. I think the Scotty Arfield's in a difficult place because probably in a normal summer, Scotty Arfield would have got another year. But we're in a position where we need transition. A lot of the fans want change. They want freshness. And I think that he's possibly just in a position where he's just been unlucky with that. I think that that's the case with him. I thought it was time for him to go. Again, Scotty Arfield's one of the nicest guys you'll meet. Training ground, always over speech, you having a laugh. Just a really genuinely nice guy. Life and soul of the dressing room kind of thing. So tough on him. Out of all of them, he's the one that kind of pulled at the heartstrings and stuff. I was delighted with him getting such a reception at the Hearts game and stuff, but I do think that the time was right.
Yeah, I do agree. I love Scott Arfield. I always remember the God Bless America buddy when it was Sands get brought in and it was on the Rangers video, and that's the kind of guy that you just love. And even when you hear him in interviews and when he spoke about the club and the way he feels, and even after now that he's left, he can't speak highly of him. He's just a cracking lad. But I do think it was time. I always said it was between, when we got to the nitty gritty of it, I said it's between Jack and Arfield, and it was always going to be Ryan Jack for me because I think he's far more important to the team than what Scott Arfield was or would be going forward. Before that, I have to say, I told you, Stevie, I said I'll aim for 40, 45 minutes, mate, and we've been going for 50 minutes.
I talk too much, so I apologise.
No, it's all right, mate. I enjoy it. I literally just clocked it and I was like, oh, right, okay, I've still got things to ask you. Butland signing, mate, Fabrizio Romano, everybody's favourite transfer agent person, has come out and said that he completed his medical today and it's pretty much announced and a done deal. What's your thoughts on that signing? Do you think McCrory deserved a chance, or do you think it's correct that Rangers are bringing in a more experienced head?
Dare I say it, Fabrizio was slightly off.
Has he jumped the gun? Has he jumped the gun, has he?
By the time when's this going out?
Probably tonight, mate. I hadn't even thought about that. I was just going to record. I'll probably do it tonight or tomorrow morning.
If it goes out tonight or tomorrow morning, then you'll certainly hear news about Jack Butland soon. But he's not signed as such yet. But I do expect that to be done. I do think he'll be a good sign. I think it's smart business. If you're looking to sign, we've got a limited budget, so we're maybe playing with anywhere between 10 and 12 million. Plus whatever he can sell and bring in from Kamara and stuff like that. So if we're playing with that kind of budget, the business that he's done so far, Michael Beale, is really sensible for me. I think Jack Butland's a good goalkeeper. He's somebody as well at 30. He's at a great age. Now, people might say, has he still got the hunger in that? He's just turned down 60 grand a week at Man United to sit on his backside doing nothing. Now, to every man in the whole world, 60 grand a week for sitting, on the bench at Man United is a pretty attractive offer. Never having the stress of playing, never worrying about anything, financially set. He's come up the road for, I would say, less than half that. At a push, less than half that. So there's no question that he's still got the hunger to be number one and be able to come through. So that side of it answers itself, I think, for me. Whether he's still got the ability is another thing. He's not played in 2 years or so properly. So we're going to need to give him time. It's probably going to be a situation where he'll make mistakes. We're going to have to let him get over that and be number one at Rangers. So I like him. I mean, he's 6'5". Instantly, he might come off his line. That's instantly attractive for me, considering what I've watched the last couple of years. Yep. So I'm instantly, happy about that. I think he's a good shot stopper. It's just, I think we need to be patient enough. It needs to be a good pre-season there. Him to get his confidence is a massive thing for a keeper. So if he comes in and he gets that back quite quickly, I think he'll be a very, very handy goalkeeper for us. Robbie McCrory, I think, should be in and amongst it. He should certainly be at very least our cup goalkeeper, at very least, if he's not pushing to be number one. I thought Robbie McCrory came in and did spectacularly well, and then something happened. I think the more that we began to say Robbie McCrory's command and he comes for everything, Robbie McCrory started to think I come for everything as well. If you watch
Yeah,
against Easter Road, I think there was ones
yeah,
he came for which he shouldn't have came from. And then
100%.
swing it the other way. See when he wasn't in goals for Hearts, that first goal would never ever have happened if he was in goals because he would have came and took the cross. So
Definitely.
swings and roundabouts, you can't have it always. But I think that Robbie just needs, I think, a wee bit more time. And if we had kept him as number one and he had made a couple of mistakes, we would be ready as a fan base to chuck him overboard as we do everybody, right? We're not a patient fan base.
No.
So we would have dumped him as quickly as possible and not being realistic with him. There has to be another option there. Robbie McCrory might start as number one. Butland will maybe have to push him, but I don't think so. I think Butland comes in as number one and he probably starts for that reason. But Robbie's there and he should be pushing on. If I hadn't have seen Easter Road, I think I would have been 100% behind Robbie McCrory. And this is really harsh from me, I think. It's really harsh. But there was that game where I just thought, maybe that's the reason we're looking to bring in somebody else. He was a wee bit erratic in some of the crosses he came for. It reminded me a wee bit of John McLaughlin at Kilmarnock in the 3-2 win, and we never
Yeah,
seen McLaughlin again. Now, that's not the case with Robbie, but I just thought that sometimes when we start saying he's great because he comes for everything, Michael Beale had commented a few times about John McLaughlin being really commanding, and John McLaughlin went too far the other way. So there needs to be a balance there, and I think it's certainly something we can coach and he'll get better with experience. So with that said, I can see why they've went and brought in Button.
yeah, I agree. I admit that I know exactly what you're talking about. The first one that he flapped at the Easter Road, it was like a wincing moment I had. I went, oh, I was like, oh, hang on. And you're right. He's probably thought to himself, I need to win everything. Like the Rangers fans are looking for me to come out and collect every ball that comes anywhere near the box, and it's not really the case. I just think if Butland's coming in as well for the money that he's going to be paid, mate, I just can't see him not being the number one. But I agree. I think McCrory's more than decent enough to be an understudy and be a number two and to push Butland as much as he can and be there and be ready for when he's called upon. And I think the cup keeper thing is probably the least he deserves. So yeah, but I think Butland's it's a good bit of business. I like it as well. At points it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Now it is, but Fabrizio Romano doesn't know everything. You've heard it here first that he doesn't know everything.
Oh,
So
I wouldn't say that. I would just say that
no,
he's
Stevie,
slightly,
that's it, Stevie. I'm
so
telling everybody that you know more than Fabrizio Romano, mate. That's it.
certainly don't.
Right, before I let you get out of here, mate, your thoughts going into next season, your crystal ball, mate, your magic crystal ball that you always look into. Obviously, we're not here to talk about the other side of the city. We're not here to talk about Celtic, but it looks like Ange Postecoglou is about to leave to go to Spurs, so there's going to be a transition for them as well going forward. But what do you expect for Rangers? What is obviously the league is the priority, but what do you expect from Beale next season in terms of success, in terms of the way that he intends to play football? It's a very broad question, mate, to finish up. I do appreciate that.
What I would say before we go on to Rangers is I find the Postecoglou thing a bit funny and a bit amusing because I've heard now for 2 years people saying to me about Steven Gerrard, do I look happy? And that famous kind of quote that he said. Well, literally only 6 weeks ago, Ange Postecoglou came out and said people will be surprised by the length of time I'm here and I'm not going anywhere and not giving it all that. So it's funny the way football works. So
It
um,
is. It's
I
very
do
funny.
I do find that a wee bit, at the very least, chuckle worthy because we've had it stinking off people for Gerrard the last couple of years. So, football is a weird way of coming back round. But as for Rangers, Michael Beale, I hope and I think we'll see an attractive style of football. I think we'll see an attacking style of football. I think you'll see a switch in formation away from 4-3-3. I think that'll come away. I think that in order to do it, I don't mind. Listen, I can get on board with signing Dowell, Sterling, signing Jack Butland. I fully expect Jose Cifuentes to come and arrive as well, Ecuadorian midfielder. I think
Yeah.
that, without saying it's done, I think that'll be close. I think you might even hear about that quite soon as well. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. You're doing the four of them in for what, £1 million? You'll need to pay for Cifuentes. So £500,000, a million, whatever they get for having 6 months left. For that is really smart business. But you've then got what I think is 4 positions left you need to fill. You need to get a centre back. I think that's clear. I think midfield's all right because then you would have Raskin, Cantwell, Jack, Lundstrom. Then you have Tom Lawrence maybe coming back into that. You have Cifuentes in there. Forward line needs fixed. So for me, you need 3 in there. 1 centre half left out of the other 4. I'm predicting 8, and that's why I'm kind of going with that. So you need a centre back and you need 3 forwards. Of those 3 forwards, you need guys that are going to hit 15 goals. You need a striker, a number 9, who will hit 25 if you want to be a successful side. Or you get 3 or 4 that all share 20 goals each, like we famously did De Boer, Arveladze, and stuff like that under McLeish.
Yeah.
Even Walter had Miller and Boyd, kind of pitching in with those kind of numbers. So we need to, even Lafferty pitched in with 15, right? So we need to find that. That's going to be the decisive difference between what's happening this season and next season. We must find killers. We must find guys that don't miss, right? Guys that are going to take your chances, guys that are going to, make the difference makers. The problem for Bila is he's maybe got to find these guys for 3-4 million. And I think that's what will end up happening. I wouldn't be surprised if the 4 we talked about maybe get done for that amount. And then you see the other 4 that come in, or 3 or whatever it is that he brings in, will be money spent 3-4 million on each. That's where I kind of am. That's what I'm hoping for. And that's going to be the difference for me this season. It's going to be the difference, or the coming season rather. But it's going to be the difference between turning us into what is a good watch under Beale. I think he's done all right with the team that he's got. We ultimately didn't do anything. We didn't win anything. But I think that what we had, he's done enough for me to be convinced that he spoke a lot about it being in the 2 boxes. Well, to fix that, we needed a goalie. Check, we've done that. Needed a centre back. So we still to fix that. And then they need goal scorers. That's your difference for me. So the next few weeks, he said he wanted them in by the start of June. But start of July, sorry. The end of June when the players come back. So the next few weeks are going to be interesting for us as a support. I'm really excited about it. I'm energised about what's happening at the club. I think that it's a really positive thing. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really positive under Michael Beale. But if you remember, roughly about 50 minutes ago, I told everybody I was really happy and positive under Brock.
I know, mate.
So I think,
It's
with regards to listening to me, you should maybe just ignore the majority of what comes out of my mouth. But I am really positive under Beale, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see a really positive season ahead. And I do trust him. I do think that there's an air of positivity around the club that we're going to take the next step, which I think is really important.
I 100% agree. I expect the investment, the money to be spent. There's going to be spent to be in the front line, mate. I think it's critical to be spent there. I can't add any more to that, mate. You're thinking it along the lines of where the investment needs to be is exactly the way I feel. I think the business that we're doing just now is clever business. We're taking advantage of the Bosmans where we can, but we are going to need someone that isn't running out of contract. We're going to have to actually spend a bit of money on a striker out and out. I get slated all the time, mate, so I can't let you leave without asking you this. Would you keep Fashion Sakala at the club, or would you get rid of him?
If somebody came in and offered me £5 million for Fashion Sakala, along with probably the majority of other players in the squad, to be honest, then the answer would be yes. But people say, maybe take 3 million for Fashion, or that. Would 3 million, give you the 20 goal involvements, or 24 goal involvements that he had? Now, I don't think Fashion Sakala is a starter for Rangers. I don't think the Fashion Sakala is a polished, tremendous player, but I think Fashion Sakala has scored and contributed, 24 goal assists and goals and stuff like that in a team that's really poor and not functioning properly without a forward line. You stick him in next to a team that's good, players that are finishing, players that are excited and want to be there and want a challenge, and trying to turn us into champions and stuff like that, then I think that Fashion Sakala will get those numbers again. So where are you going to pick up somebody for £3 million or £5 million that gives you what Fashion Sakala gives you? Is he a nightmare? Can he go from
Yes.
the worst player on the pitch to the best player on the pitch to back to the worst player on the pitch all within a minute? Absolutely, he can. But
Yeah.
the bigger picture of where we need to go and what we're trying to do, I think that Fashion Sakala survives quite rightly on performance. And he's a really likable guy, by the way. See, when he comes in a press
Yeah.
conference now, he's so funny because he's just normally he scored a couple of goals or something. So he comes, he walks in like Vince McMahon from the WWE and stuff, a big
Yeah.
huge smile and that on his face. Like the big walk in, sits down, hello everyone, and he's incredibly brilliant. He's the
Yeah.
nicest guy. And I think, there's a whole kind of romantic side of it that wants Fashion Sakala to be holding up the league trophy and do that. So unless you're chucking funny money at Fashion Sakala, I don't think cashing him in for £3 million or whatever that people have kind of spoke about offers you enough for what he gives you and the numbers he gives you. And yes, we'll have to put up with misses at Parkhead and stuff like that. I get it completely, but look at the other side of what he gives you. And he gives you, ultimate professional effort and all sorts of stuff. So no, unless it's funny money, I'm keeping Fashion Sakala, and by the way, he will get you 15 goals next season. He will get you 15 goals. So and he deserves, I think, on that merit to be given another opportunity. So and by the way, he will absolutely infuriate all of us, and he will run the ball out and he'll do all sorts of mad stuff, and then he'll smack one in from 30 yards. And do you know who
Yeah.
used to be like that a lot? From when I was growing up and watching Rangers at 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, Shota Arveladze did that on a weekly basis, by the way. He would miss unbelievable chances and then
Yeah.
smack a 30-yard belter. So Shota Arveladze was a better player than Fashion, more skillful, better on the ball and stuff like that, but equally as infuriating. So we've had a few of them throughout the years, and I think that Fashion certainly deserves. I like him. I can't help but not like him. I think he's a very likable guy, and he'll get numbers. He's not. Listen, I'm not saying he's first choice or he's perfect, but he will get numbers for you.
I think I'm going to base it on, and I'm trying to be polite here because I've got guests on my podcast, but I think it's based on the way this season went. That see, by the time we got to the end and I was watching the Dead Rubber games and I was seeing him cutting inside and scuffing a ball and ballooning it over the bar, I was like, I can't sit and watch this anymore and pretend it's okay. But you can't disagree with his numbers, mate. You're right, and I've always said that. I don't want any player that ever comes to play for us to be not to be a success, because if they're a success, then my team's more than likely going to be a success. So that's what it's all about for me. But with Fashion, I have never been so infuriated at a player and 2 minutes later he'll score a goal. I've never experienced anything like it before. But I get
Here's
slaughtered for it all the time.
here's my theory. Every player that's got a cool song, right, is never good enough. And
Yeah,
that
that's
is
true.
right. See, like there's only one Paul Gascoigne walking in a Loudrop Wonderland, like the worst
Yeah,
songs ever,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
And then all the guys that have got the great songs that we all absolutely love, and the songs
The
reverberate and
waka
everyone
waka.
sings them, aren't great. So, good song, average player. I think that's where we need to be. So
Yeah,
that's my
yeah.
theory.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's quite a good theory, mate. The lads love the waka waka. I get that sent to me constantly, mate, because I'm constantly slating them. But no, an interesting season coming up, mate. I don't think there's any great doubt about that. Stevie, thank you so much for coming on, mate, and joining me for this discussion about Rangers tonight. I've kept you half an hour longer than I said I would, but I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy hearing your views on things, mate. So I can't thank you enough, mate, for coming on tonight.
No, mate, listen, it's not you. Apologies. I rabbit on something rotten, don't I, about Rangers and about experiences and stuff like that. Listen, I think, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the podcast. You guys do a brilliant job, and I think that's first things first. It's always nice to be invited on to these things. I'm just I say to everybody, like, I'm just a Rangers fan, like everybody else is. I've maybe got a louder voice or platform than some others, but it doesn't mean it's more important than anyone. And I would hate for people to think that that was the case. I just like talking about our club. Kids are in bed. They have been since 8. Wife's out. She's due back. I don't know if people have noticed. I keep looking over because cars passed. I'm like, oh my God, is that her back? But she'll be like, how are you not finished that podcast? So thank you, everybody that's kind of listened and watched. And I appreciate being invited on, Scott. Like, I really do. It's been brilliant to chat. And hopefully we'll do it again next season when we're in a much better position at the club.
I'll hold you to that, mate. This time next season, mate, we'll sit here and hopefully we're sitting here having a celebration. More than discussing where things went wrong. Put it that way. No, I can't thank enough. Everybody knows. If you don't know, at Full Lads had a dream absolutely everywhere. Obviously, go check out the blogs as well. Stevie's one of, if not the best at it, as far as I'm concerned. And again, Stevie, I say I really do appreciate you coming on, mate. It's been an absolute joy, and we'll definitely do this again. So yeah, before you go, if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, all the usual stuff. We will be back on Friday with a club live pod as usual. So again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Stevie for coming on. We are Club at 22, the Rangers podcast. Cheers, everybody.